anyway, I got that squashed.
Which would have resulted in the privatization of the county jail.
Yes, and then all of our jailers, all the people we got working down there, which is lose all their
would not be county employees.
No, not be county employees anymore. They probably wouldn't go to work for them. They'd lose all their retirement, all their insurance benefits, and everything. That just happened in Johnson County.
Yes, sir.
You know that. And then CEC pulled out because
Yes,
they couldn't
sir.
make any money. All the people that left, all the jailers that left Johnson County, they didn't know what to do. They ended up giving it to somebody else. I think it cost the county a lot of money because they had to lower their price. They ended up giving it to another private organization, I'm told. And that was a big mess because that was CEC. They could, you know. So the jailers were really, you know, back behind me and everything else, and they appreciated what I did for them. You know, they were trying to, they didn't like the judge. They knew what was going on. They were trying to do something to get him in some trouble, but they dropped the ball somewhere. Anything ever became of that. And it smelled so bad, it's unbelievable. I even had somebody that was up in law enforcement tell me the same thing, but they just can't prove anything.
So there is no remedy at law?
A remedy for what?
What sounds like collusion and bid rigging.
I've tried. And I was just
In the future, do you see a remedy in changing the procedures the way things are done?
Oh, I've been trying to do that for 12, 13 years.
What seems to be the major stumbling block?
Jim Lewis always wants to control the county and control the court. He always has to have two people with him on the court to get the votes. He's always had, since I've been in here, he had Ray Meadows and Wayne Davis. I really didn't know because back then, when Wayne died, I was still in good graces with the judge because I didn't know what he was doing. Every time somebody new gets elected, you know, he brings them in, acts like they're his long-lost daddy or brother or something, tries to help them just like he did me, and he's done it to everybody else. And then when I found out the way he was doing business, about taking higher bids and always trying to do business with people that help him one way or the other, you know, and I started asking questions, and then he kind of quit talking to me, and it just got worse year in, year out because I kept asking questions about why he's taking the high bid on the jail food contracts, which he was deep into that. Nothing ever happened on that.
Well, the guy died. I mean, the main suspect died. It's kind of hard to prosecute a guy who's dead.
I had trouble with the guy that took over because I got so sick of this crap, you know. I told him, I said, we're not going to renew this contract anymore. And I had to meet, and I shouldn't have had to do this, but I had to go to Mike Dixon's office and meet with the sheriff. Larry Lynch was there, Randy Clements was there, I was there, Mike Dixon, and the people from this jail food contract. I can't think, it was American something, wasn't it? I don't remember what it was. But anyway, they were all upset. And they said, we can understand why you're unhappy. You know, we don't understand. I said, let me tell you something. The sheriff, 3 years ago, asked me that if this other company, they do Baylor, I can't remember their name right now. I said, this other company is the low bid. We would like to go with this company because they've got a good reputation, they're local, and they do Baylor, and Baylor's completely happy with them. We'd like to make some changes and get this thing cleaned up. I said, okay, well, guess what? They were the low bid. I couldn't get the votes. I'm asking questions right and left in court, embarrassing the judge because he got no answers. That happened 2 years in a row. And finally, they quit bidding. But I told this guy, I said, you know, I don't understand it because your bid was higher, but I never could get the votes, you know, to go with the other company. Because I said the judge seemed to control everything. And I said, we still can't figure out why he kept wanting to go with you guys. I said, a lot of controversy about that, you know. And I said, the sheriff came to me, they didn't want you 3 years ago. You're gone. Well, we don't want it advertised out. I said, I don't have to advertise it. You're gone. So, you know, we gave them a little notice time and stuff. They pulled out. They were very upset. Big money in that. Big money.
So you don't really see anything but a political solution to
We need to get rid of the county judge.
Thank
This
you.
whole county needs to get rid of this county judge. He just never had anybody that was worthy to run against him that made any impact. You know, Linda Etheridge could have made a very good county judge. She went about it the wrong way. I told her. I said, I'm going to tell you what the judge is going to do. I know him like the back of my hand, Linda. He's going to change parties. If a Democrat doesn't come out against him, he's going to wait till the last minute to sign up. If a Democrat doesn't come out, he's going to run as Republican. Oh, I don't think he will, Jeff. I said, I'm going to tell you, he will. And he did exactly what I told her. And 2 weeks after, he signed up as a Republican, if you remember seeing him. Signs all over town. He already had them ready to go. He didn't say what party he was, but he had them re-elect Jim Lewis. They were on the bus stop seats all over town. They were on little small billboards all over town. He had them ready to go. He set her up, and she didn't go to town. She thought she'd wait till November to run against him. He beat her bad in March. And she's a good lady, you know. But there's just not anybody, you know. But, you know, he still tries to control things, and, you know, if it's right, I don't mind. If it's not right, if it's wrong, you know, I'm going to voice my opinion about it. That's all there is to it. I may not get the votes, but by God, he's going to hear from me, and he knows it. You know, I don't care.
Commissioner, would it be an inaccurate statement to say that when the pricing committee for the issuance of the jail bonds was created, the court had the impression that the bonds would come back before the Commissioner's Court for approval, when in reality what happened was the pricing committee had complete autonomy and issued the bonds?
That's right, because I didn't know this, but Herb Bristow, thanks to Herb Bristow, he had everything set to where, of course, I didn't have any say. Ray Meadows was the financial officer and the judge. Them two only made the decision. So when the bonds were sold, it never came to the court. Lester found out about it. And then when Lester brought it up in Commissioner's Court, asked Herb Bristow said, well, there's no reason to tell the court because Judge Lewis and Commissioner Meadows approved it.
It's just housekeeping.
Yes.
So we can say that doing business as an elected official in McLennan County puts you in as information poor a situation as that of a journalist, where you just can't find anything out.
Depends on what it is. Depends on what it is. When I have to find out from the county judge or Herb Bristow, I'm not going to find out a whole lot. Because to this day, we have never found out about it. Because there was supposed to be a changing of ownership of this bond that first bought it out for a percentage rate. And then the story was going on, and I found out that may not necessarily have been true, that they sat on these bonds for 90 days, I think it was, and then resold them and made a $3 million profit. But I tried to find out through different people, and I never could get an answer on that because we just couldn't find out who's in it. There's a corporation, there's a secret corporation that goes on, I feel like. And there's people that are involved that's got big money, and they use maybe the county as a guiding light to end up getting into investments and maybe turning around and making profit on it. And it's not just with bonds, it could be with real estate and different things like that. There's a lot of connections. I did find out that one of our attorneys named Steve Meeks, and I like Steve to death, he does our fines and fees out of Fort Worth, you know, because we had a state conference in Fort Worth, and the judge invited me to come over to Steve's house. He had a little cocktail party for everybody, fed them steaks and stuff. Not everybody, but it was about 12, 15 people there, and I was there, and they were just very nice to me, and I really liked him a lot. But then right after that, I had been asking the judge about, you know, we have an attorney, we have attorneys here, a group that's local that collects past due taxes, you know, and overdue taxes and stuff, but we never had anybody that collects past due fines. And I was asking about, we need to try to find somebody to do this because we had like $4 million out there, you know, from going many, many years back. Because Travis Bailey was boasting that he was going to get this done when he was running for office, but it never happened. It was just too big for him. So then I started asking questions about that, and then next thing you know, about a week after that state conference, Jim calls me in his office and says, you know, you've been really talking about trying to get some past due fines and fees and things done, you know, for the county. He says, you know, Steve Meeks, we had dinner with him, played golf with him at the conference. I said, yeah. He said, you know, his group does that. He said, that's what they specialize in, you know. And I said, well, that's great. I said, but you know, Jim, I said, you know, I work for McLennan County, and they pay my paycheck out of tax dollars. And I said, if all possible, I'd like to find somebody local that could come in and do this. He said, well, I don't think there's anybody local that does that around here. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, let me check, Jim. I'll make some phone calls, and I'll check around to see if there is anybody, and I'll get back with you on this. He said, well, don't do anything unless you talk to me. what he told me. I said, well, I'm gonna check. He said, that's fine. He said, but you know, don't make any decisions or any commitments, you know, unless you talk to me. I said, all right. Well, 2 to 3 weeks later, he calls me back in his office. And there was somebody that I had found out that was a local attorney's office here in town that did that. And they wanted to have a meeting with the county. And I said, well, let me get back with you. I'm trying to get this thing set up. And then Jim calls me back in his office and he says, well, I got some good news. You know, Steve Meeks, you know, I told you that he did the fines and fees and you wanted to get it done local. I said, yeah. He said he has joined Linebarger. They're in partnerships now. And they joined Linebarger's firm. So it's like if we do it with Steve Meeks, he said they're going to go through Linebarger, they're partners now. And it's like it's local, it's the same thing. We'll still deal with Marty and all that over here. I said, okay. I said, that's fine with me as long as I go through Linebarger that's local. He said, yeah. So now they do it. Let's see he joined. Now who do you think made a phone call to Steve Meeks and said, hey, Mashek wants to go local. You know, you might need to see if you can join and give them a little percentage of it too. And they do a great job for us. They do a great job for us. But it's crap like that. You know, and it kept getting worse and worse, you know. So anyway, there's just so much stuff that I've learned. I really didn't know this went on. You know, I just came in to try to do a good job as a county commissioner and do with the constituents and the taxpayers, you know, try to do the best job I can to keep the tax rate down and improve the county. And I think I've done a lot of that, but I had no earthly idea how deep that our county judge was, and with all these other big money people about, you know, how things work that way. I just had no earthly idea until I had to find out myself. And then you see who's on board with him, you know, and I just shake my head. And it just, you know, it's strong. I'll be honest with you, he's a powerful man. He got a lot of rich friends in this town, big money people. They can't get me out of office, they've tried, but you know, they got big money, you know, and I'm sure there's no telling them. Did we ever look to see what's in his campaign account, the judges? I sure would like to. Have you ever looked, Scott? Mm-hmm. How much money's he got in his campaign account, the judge, you know?
Is it, when I've looked, I think it's been an insignificant amount. It's like $50,000.
That's a tremendous amount of money to me. Tremendous amount, but it takes a lot of money if you're a county.
I expected it to be several times that much.
Well, but anyway, yeah, there's just a lot of things, you know, and I was hoping, you know, when we started getting, you know, Ray got beat, you know, and Wendell got beat, and I thought, you know, we're going to make some changes here. We're going to do what's right for the county, you know. And we have done some things like hiring Dr. Wells. You know, I mean, that was a big, big positive thing that we've done for the county and saving us a lot of money. Hiring Eva Cruz, welfare. You know, he was against all that. So was Ray. She has saved us a tremendous amount of money. Finally got somebody in that cares, you know, that really works and has really got that department doing good. And, you know, we keep trying to make some improvements. And I thought, you know, when Ben got in here, you know, that'd be just even stronger, you know. But he goes both ways. I don't understand him, you know. But that's his decision.
Is there any issue you'd like to address?
Well, you know, I'm going to go to my grave and leave in this office after next year talking about it's ridiculous the amount of money we pay our attorneys when they're not even full-time, you know. I still say we need a full-time attorney in McLennan County that sits in our courtroom every week, gives us a report. Every contract that comes through, anything that happens with problems with any department, it covers all departments, you know, and we get reports from him. And, you know, he works for the court, not one person. And, you know, this county needs it. We could save $100,000 a year. You know, we just hired Dustin Chapman now as a full-time grant coordinator. I tried to get...
With a nice raise.
Yes, I tried to get, said, you know, we put our own attorney in here. We go through Abel's office. He appoints an attorney to represent the Commissioner of Court. We give him his own office, blah, 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 do all this. He looks at everything that we have to do and deal with. Every time you make a phone call, you're not on the clock. You know, every time you want to go see him, you're not on the clock. You know, he waits for a certain salary. We give him a professional assistant. He can also be the grant coordinator, you know, and keep us up to date on all these grants. I mean, it's just ridiculous that we don't have this. Ridiculous.
Well,
but I can't, because, see, Mike and Herb, they're excellent attorneys, okay? They cover their tracks very well. But it's almost like they're having they're personal attorneys for the judge. You know, they do everything they can to keep him out of trouble. And
I'm familiar.
And you know, the first time I brought this up, which was about 5 years ago or so, about getting our own attorney, you know, of course couldn't get the votes. First thing the judge does is calls Mike Dixon on the phone. Well, Mashek wants to get rid of you. You know, I never say anything bad about them. They're good attorneys. It's just the fact that we need somebody to represent the whole court, you know, and everything on a weekly basis. And ran into Mike 2 weeks later after that. Ran into him at a restaurant. We walked right by each other. He wouldn't even speak to me. I turned around, he walked past me, wouldn't even speak to me. I turned around and said, well, hello, Mike. He just kept walking. Now, is that professional? Because Lewis told him Mashek wants to get rid of him.
That's a heck of
They
a way
put
to
an
pitch
X
your
by
boss.
me. They put an X by me.
Well, is there an option in the local government code where you can, the Constitution, where you can elect to have a county attorney?
Yes, but it has to be, you can have two different types. You can have a county attorney, civil attorney, and he has to be elected.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with having something like that is, you know, you get used to one, it goes to bat for you, and he's doing a good job, then somebody else runs, they get elected, then you lose him. What I wanted to do was establish a legal department within our district attorney's office, which we can do.
Mm-hmm.
He has to appoint him. He said he would do it. He said, you need an attorney. Abel agreed, you need an attorney. I did all this work. Suzanne did a lot of the work. We did everything that's legal that we're supposed to do. We talked to Abel. He says, hey, I'll go whatever y'all want to do. We went down there and talked to Abel and everything else. We had the whole program ready to go. You know, I made the presentation to the Commissioner's Court why we need an attorney, because of all the deferments. You know, so many deferred things that we have to do because our attorney's not
Abel
there.
shot you down.
And then we was going to come back the next week, or was the next day. It was during budget session. Either the next day or 2 days later, we came back, and Abel came back. And I know the judge talked to him, because the judge was against the whole thing. The judge talked to him, and then all of a sudden, Abel changed his tune just a little bit.
No.
I know.
Just enough. And in that scenario, the judge's objection was that it was cost prohibitive, but the reality turned out to be that there are other counties who function in that way.
Which way?
With their with an appointed attorney like
A
that.
lot of counties do that. Which one? We talked to a guy a long time, Georgetown, wasn't it? Or, yeah, in Georgetown. And he told me that he had somebody that was working with him, but they worked for the Commissioner's Court, and it was a bad situation because every commissioner wanted her to do something for them, and they wanted her to lean one way or the other. She couldn't take it anymore, so she resigned and went into private practice. He took over, but when he took over, it was on the basis that he went under the district attorney. So the district attorney appointed him to be the county attorney, okay, and represent the court as a whole.
Much
And
the
he
same
made
way
it-
the county auditor works.
Yes, and he made it known right then, don't try to be separate from anybody. This attorney is going to represent the Commissioner's Court as a whole. Look at all contracts, negotiations, lawsuits, everything else. And he says, I do that. And he said, I get along with all the commissioners and the judge. And he said, it's a hell of a relationship. And he said, I really like my job. And that's what I wanted to do. And I mean, it was a positive thing. Not to mention, we saved somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 a year having somebody like that.
Outside of
Outside.
litigation.
And send them to conferences, you know, send them to the conferences like we send all the elected officials, you know, and give them some benefits. And Abel said, oh, you know, you're gonna have 15 attorneys apply for this if you'll pay them somewhere $85,000 to $100,000 a year.
Because there's no overhead.
But you give them, there's no overhead. We pay for everything. Most of the attorneys in Waco, unless they're high dollar attorneys, you know, it's like Joe Lehman. He's a good attorney. He told me, he says, the overhead's killing me. He said, I got to pay a paralegal. I got to pay another assistant over here. He said, my rent in my damn building is ridiculous. He said, my utilities and everything else. He said, I can't hardly come out.
Now he works for Abel.
Sure. And, you know, you get an attorney that's got a little private practice, that's a pretty sharp guy. You know, he could come and the county furnishes him an office, utilities, everything, assistant. We pay for everything. Plus, on top of it, give him insurance, retirement, vacation, sick leave, you name it. And he said, they'll be standing in line. Then he comes back after the judge talked to him. He says, I don't know if you can get anybody for less than 125, 150. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I just didn't say anything. I came this close. to asking Abel in court during budget session, did you have a conversation with the judge between yesterday and today? But I didn't. I didn't want to put Abel in that position. He would have told me the truth probably and said yes. I just let it go. Another one.
Well, that's really a fascinating lesson in political science. What you just told us, you can't learn that at a university.
No, you just have to look at what's going on around you.
You don't find it in print.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm extremely gratified that you told me this, because it's just the kind of thing.
Crap all day long that's been going on the last 15 years I've been here, I'm gonna tell you. But I just chalk it up as a lesson for me to be learned, but I don't give up. I'm gonna keep trying. I'll try again next year to get an attorney. Because like I said, I jumped Ben's ass about it this morning early in her office. And I shouldn't have done it, but he was complaining. How can we wait till the last minute to get this doctor's contract? I said, Ben, how can we wait till the last minute to do a lot of contracts that are controversial? I said, you know why we do? I said, because we don't have an attorney sits in our court every day, every week, that has an office here that could see these contracts and make reports to us at every commissioner's court. We don't have one. And I said, I've been trying for years to get one, but you didn't want to go that direction, and I can't believe you made that decision. I shouldn't have said that. He said, well, I just decided to go that way. I said, well, we need a damn attorney. We do. But that's his decision. There's nothing I can do about that.
Well, let me ask you this. Would you say that wise old individual who originally said this, and there's no telling who it was or when it was said, but that a Texas courthouse under the Texas Constitution is a exercise in just benign anarchy, that you've got...
No, I wouldn't say that.
You wouldn't?
No, because listen, I have learned this also. I go to a lot of conferences.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to a lot of the commissioners. I talk to a lot of judges. Some of them are good friends of mine. Some of them have come. Some of them have gone. And there's controversy in a lot of them. There is. But there's some courts, they get along just fine. You talk about Bell County. Bell County's got a great commissioner's court. The judge is a very nice guy. He's honest as the day is long. They got good commissioners in there. They all get along. They don't have the controversy that we have. A lot of the controversy we have here is because of one of the commissioners. We're all racist. Anytime there's something that goes on that he doesn't like, we're all racist. That's just what he has to say. I get tired of hearing that story, and it just goes on and on and on. And then the judge trying to rule and control the commissioner's court. Everybody's got their own decision. Everybody's got a separate mind. And I look at it as a whole of what's best for my constituents, what's best for this county, and I'll be the first one to stand up and say, hey, I'm no saint, hell, but I took an oath, to do what's the best thing for the county to do, and I feel like I have done that. And it just upsets me when I see somebody that's not. Some people get caught. I had a good friend of mine that got caught here, 6 months ago, John Matthews, the dummy. Commissioner, just got elected 4 years ago, commissioner in Johnson County, and they give them a credit card to buy supplies for their yard and all their precinct yard stuff like that. Hell, he was charging swimming pool supplies and yard furniture, and he's taking it to his house, and they finally caught him. And I mean, the guy, I just can't believe that. But he got caught. Good for him. He had to resign. That happens to a lot of different people. But I just try to do what's best for this county, and I feel like I've done a good job. I feel like I got a good record. This whole thing about pay raise, I make less than all the other commissioners, which is fine. I make plenty of money, but I'm going to be honest with you. Next budget session, I'm going to make a hell of a presentation about freezing the salaries of some of these elected officials, like the sheriff and the tax assessor and the county, the district clerk and the county clerk and the county judge and auditor and commissioners. I mean, this is crazy because the percentages over the last 15 years, like I said, the judge, the more you make, the higher your percentage is. And he'll pull in $2,000 or $3,000 on a 3% cost of living raise, but little Janie down there, that's a receptionist, that's making $28,000 a year, she'll pull in,
$70.
$700 a year, and he's pulling in $3,000. and he doesn't even need the money. He got upset because I went for the 600. I'm so glad it passed. I was trying to get more, you know, for the regular employees. That wouldn't go. But the judge voted against it. He wanted his percentage so he could get more money. But it's time, you know, because a county of our size, and you got regular commissioners, the other ones are making like 88,000, or is that what they're making now? You know, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's okay, but let's stop somewhere. You know, you got to stop somewhere. Hell, when I first got elected, I was making $56,000 or $57,000 a year. My first year is what my salary was. I made more than the other job I had, and that's fine. I just wanted to be a commissioner. Because of raises and cost of living percentage raises, I've gone from 57,000 to 82 in 15 years. That's a hell of a raise. I'm telling you. And they make more than I do. And so it's got to stop somewhere.
Why is that? Why do people doing equal work get more money than you do?
Well, I chose not to take the raise. When they, Lester brought the raise up, you know, then when I didn't take it, they got mad because it made him look bad. And then Ray first, he's the first one. Well, you know, Joe Mashek's the one that brought it up. That's a damn lie. I did not. Lester brought it up. Lester said the same thing. Because they were on them about taking the raise when Commissioner Mashek did. Well, Mashek's the one that brought it up. It's a lie. You know, Lester made the big presentation. The judge wasn't there. He was out that day at budget hearing. He went on 10 minutes about how fiscal he is, how conservative he is, and how we do this and we do that. And I'm sitting there listening to all this. And then what does he do? When he gets finished, he pushes his chair away like this. He backs away from the microphone. And he turns to me and Ray like this, and he says, I want to talk about a raise for the commissioner. I started laughing. I said, something, what was it? Talk about it now, the newspaper man's not here. You know, I wasn't hiding nothing. I was making a joke. Well, Witherspoon, he took it like I was trying to hide something from him, you know. I didn't care about that. But Lester didn't want to say it in the microphone, you know. And then that went on, you know, and I still never have taken that raise, and I ain't going to.
Tommy and I go way back, man. When Deeb got his next trial, you know, he came up to Cleveland, and it was understood that the chief judge up there, Kid Cook, he did not want that retried in Johnson County. Just couldn't stand it. Dick DeGuerin was up there. It was just awful. And Tommy came up there, and I said, well, you know, I've always wanted to meet you, Mr. Witherspoon. Your copy just sings, dances, walks the dog, and 4-point harmony. You're a wonderful reporter.
He loves controversy.
Right, and so he said something kind of tart to me, and so I asked him a follow-up question, and whatever he said, I included it in my story. Well, they wore him out on that desk over there. They said, you're not supposed to go to Cleveland, Texas, and become part of the story. Who is Jim Parks? He said, well, he calls himself a legendary. Well, I don't care who he thinks he is. Don't you say a word around somebody else from the media. This is a professional organization. Yeah, this is not, you know. So that next day, he saw me up there, and man, I mean, he wore me out.
Well, he got a smart mouth on him, and I'll tell you, I put up with him. But the last straw is when he kept coming over saying, you know, well, you know, they saying that you, I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I need to write a letter to the editor. I said, I'm catching hell because Lester and Ray, they're mad at me. And they're saying that I started this. I never said a word about it. I complained about the election department head, Kathy Van Wolf, kept asking for all these raises. And I got upset about it. And I talked to him about that. But I never said anything commissioner need a raise. I said, I'm going to write he said, write a letter to the editor. And he says, I'll print it. He said, but give it to me. He said, give it to me and I'll make sure it gets printed. Well, like a dummy. I did. I wrote a letter to the editor. I gave it to Witherspoon. Oh. What's he do? What's Witherspoon do? He goes and shows it to Ray Meadows. And Ray looks at it and says, Mashek is the one that started this whole thing. So when he prints my letter to the editor, he printed it like I wrote it to the editor. Below, he had editor's note. Commissioner Meadows still states that Commissioner Mashek started the whole thing. See, he wouldn't take my word for it, but he took Ray Meadows' word for it. Just, you know, and that's it. I said, I'm through with Witherspoon. I wouldn't ever speak to him again.
Well, does that characterize your experience in a one newspaper town?
Well, the lady that's in there now, And Witherspoon, if it's controversial, he will be right there. And to a certain extent, I admired Witherspoon because he would go after anybody. He would go after the judge. You know, he would. And everybody had controversy with Witherspoon because he'd dive right in. He didn't care who you were. I admire that to a certain extent. But to try to get my trust into me giving him a letter to the editor, which I'm telling the truth, and then he goes to Ray Meadows and shows Ray the letter, and then puts it in the paper, Commissioner Meadows, well, what he's saying is, Mashek's lying, because Ray says Mashek started it. I said, that's it. Anytime he ever asked me a question, after that, no comment. No comment. And it got to where he couldn't talk to me anymore, and then they moved him somewhere else, and they've got this little Regina, and she's too nice. She won't go after anybody. And that's just the way she is. She's pretty new and stuff like that, but she's a nice girl.
Well, I admire Witherspoon's style and his reporting.
He's got a lot of guts.
I trust his reporting implicitly. I've never had a problem with that. But, you know, it occurs to me that he may have learned something from Commissioner Joe Mashek that no comment is a comment many times, and that, you know, that's the way things go. And of course, I pick on him. Because he got ugly with me, you know. I mean, I was just trying to be one of the boys.
Well, I was always friends with him because we went same school. We both went to North Texas. He played football, I think, 1 year, and then quit playing. I don't think he really had a 4-year scholarship, but you know, he told me that he played football at North Texas. He was after me and all that other stuff, and I thought, well, you know, we get along real fine, and we did for a while. But then, you know, when things started happening, you know, he just seemed to take everybody else's side, not mine, and that's his business to do that. But I would never put any trust in him again or anything else like that. And so I don't speak.
Well, to sum up, then, I see that we're taking up quite a bit of your time. And to sum up, that your last year is going to be a busy one. You want to raise some salaries. You want to.
I want to raise salaries of the lower paid.
The lower paid folks, yes. And you want to cap or freeze.
I want to cap or freeze the salaries of the higher paid elected officials. It's gotten high enough for a county our size.
You want to replace the county attorney representation with an appointed county attorney that's in
the district attorney's office. Let the district attorney appoint one for us that deals only with the commissioner's court, takes care of all departments throughout the county, sheriff's department, which we have a lot of problems in our jail, lawsuits. I mean, if we got an attorney and we needed somebody more professional, it became to court, which we haven't been to actually a trial since I've been here.
It's litigation.
Yeah, it's litigation, but we never go to trial since I've been here. It's always been settled before trial. And so I don't know why we need somebody, but we could always go to somebody else. But we need somebody, and that's my number one. This county needs an attorney full-time. And
you also want to strive to do something about contracting, purchasing, making a more uniform and formalized way of doing things without last-minute negotiations or that type of thing.
And I feel like that would all take place if we had an attorney. A lot of that would be better taking place. I was talking to Ken Bass, our purchasing director, during the break in between, and I said, I was telling him about contracts, and I said, Ben was complaining about, you know, why this thing comes up. He says, Commissioner, I get it out as soon as I can. He said, on most contracts, he said, some of the bigger contracts come through the judge's office. I said, I told Ben that. I know it does. He's the one that decides when to put it on the agenda about the contract. If it's controversial, or if there's a price increase, or he's friends with the people that's doing it and he wants to stay with them, he doesn't give us enough time, you know, to make decisions. And then of course it's always the same old crap.
In all actuality, the only contracts that the purchasing department puts on the agenda are the ones that are out for bid.
Yes.
And this was a professional service.
Professional service contracts don't necessarily go out for bid.
It's for road and bridge materials, office supplies, printing, you know, things like that. Those things are on a scheduled calendar.
Right.
And those come up on the agenda.
But there's hardly ever any controversy about those.
Right.
It's the professional contracts. Somebody that's doing something for somebody else, you know, there's controversy. Then he waits to put that on, and then it's the same old crap every time. If there's a question about it, well, we need to get with Mike Dixon,
or,
Well, he's
you know,
not there.
we're running out of time.
Or then he comes back and says, well, we're running out of time, running out of time. And one of the smartest things we did, you know, we took the budget officer position away from the judge. And of course, y'all know this. As soon as we had hired Adam, we didn't have a tax increase. We found, what is it, 800? No, or was it a million? 800,000 or a million something?
With the tobacco money and the money that we were spending on.
Well, we found all this money. And, you know, we never would have known about it when the
What's the
judge was
tobacco money?
Tobacco money is, we still have tobacco money, but we used part of it for,
Funding our health insurance.
yeah,
for
funding that
our
our health
employees.
insurance, we went self-employed.
It's a federal settlement that we were paid over a number of years.
Yeah, everybody was getting, all the counties, we
to
got our
fund
money,
their indigent health care for
3 to
people
4 million altogether,
cigarettes.
and we've always used like 60.
Please forgive me for not being
That's all right.
prepared.
We used it for our public health, we give money to them every year, and most
The
of it used to
interest.
come from just the interest that we earned only. But hell, the interest was down to nothing. And so when we went to self-insured, you know, we used a lot of that, we decided to use tobacco money because it had to do with health, you know, and everything else. We used some of that tobacco money to fund what we needed to fund in case, you know, we run over. And that's one of the smartest things we ever did, is go self-insured. And it's going to save us a lot of money in the long run, and the judge was against that too. Of course, this Insurers of Texas, that's why this guy named Brian Scott's running against me, because Tom Chase, who owns Insurers of Texas, they was doing business with us all these years as our third party, doing all our writing and stuff like that, you know, paperwork, stuff like that, for when you went and had surgery or something, you know, it goes to them and they do the paperwork and they file and all this other stuff. They were making such a tremendous amount of money off the county, it's unbelievable. And so when we decided to go self-insured, you know, we all went out for bid. How many we have, 12 or 14 different?
12, 13, 14.
12, 13, 14 companies
Instead of 2.
gave us bids. Guess where Insurers of Texas was? Almost the highest. Almost the highest. And we paying all that money all these years. Well, he got mad.
We
Because we
hired
quit.
an independent insurance.
Yeah, we hired an
consultant
independent
for
insurance
$40,000.
thing to do it, and he was so nice. He came and explained everything that we need to do to be self-insured. We're saving a tremendous amount of money using them instead of Insurers of Texas. Well, this guy got mad, and so he got this Brian Scott boy who's had 15 different jobs in 10 years to move back from Temple to come, and if he said, I'll give you a job, and I want you to run as a Democrat and county commissioner against Mashek, because we don't do business with him anymore, and that's fine. But I mean, it's politics. It's politics. I mean,
That's what they mean when they say politics.
Yeah, that's
I don't
amazing.
care where you go. You go anywhere, downtown Rome to downtown New York or downtown Singapore, they always say politics.
Yeah.
And that's the signal, the international signal for politics.
Mhm.
But this has got to be one of the most interesting and productive interviews
Well,
that I've ever been given
I hope it was. I just,
from
like I said, I
a
just
political person.
come right out and tell you the way I feel about these things. You know, I've been fighting this crap for a lot of years. And like I always tell everybody, you know, well, I may not get the vote, but goddamn, they're going to hear what I have to say.
I know you there.
You know?
Well, I'm from the Black Land too.
Mhm.
All my people are from up around Hillsborough and Waxahachie and around in there. So same, kind of the same part of the prairie that you're from and everything. And I just I really want to thank you for giving me
Very
your
well,
time, sir.
very well. And I want to apologize to you for having to postpone last week. I had a funeral, you know, actually two funerals. One, I was a pallbearer and my cousin died. I had forgotten about it. And then the next day, a very good friend of mine, he was a young